See, when you're afraid, that is a moment of truth. When you have to decide, am I going to be paralyzed by this or am I going to be motivated by this? That's a moment when your real faith is revealed. That's a moment when you can tell if you really have faith. Exodus chapter 14, verse 15 through 16, it says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Why are you crying out to me?'" I love this passage. "Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go." Circle a couple of words and phrases here. Circle, move on, and go. So first he's telling them, stand still, look up to me, see that I'm real, I'm available, I'm here to help you. And throughout all this experience, now Moses has been praying, the people have been crying out. And now God's saying, time's up. You've prayed enough. You see, there's a time in our life when we need to pray, and there's a time in our life when we need to stop praying and start doing what God wants us to do. Do you understand that? God said, it's okay for you to pray for a while. Look up to me, cry out to me. I'm here, I'm available. Now it's time to move on and get going. Get it in gear. Take the plunge, literally in this case, because they were going to be going right into the Red Sea. I think that's the way it works in our own life as well. We get so caught up into thinking about what we need to do and maybe how to do it and all the particulars about it, like Scott talked about the wedding, that we forget we actually need to go do something about it. It's like for years and years and years, people have been hearing about their need to be saved, and they keep telling me, yeah, one day I'm going to do it. Yep, one day I'm going to get there. One day. God says, get moving. Do it. Accept me. I've heard people right here at this church say, one day I'm going to get baptized, Mark. But something's been holding them back. Maybe fear of something or another. I don't know what it is. And God is saying to you, if you don't want to be baptized, you're afraid to be baptized for some reason, God's saying to you, get going. Do it. Get it in gear. Get baptized. Do what I'm asking you to do. Never allow your fear to keep you from doing what God wants you to do. Never. That's why at the beginning of last year, when we started having all of this crisis going on with the coronavirus, we stopped having services for a couple of months. But we didn't stop having services. We didn't allow fear to keep us from doing what God wanted us to do. Are you listening to me? Yeah, we were careful. We didn't have any in-person services for a couple of months. But in May of last year, around Memorial Day, we came back. We said we're going to have services. Not everybody came back. In fact, not everybody has come back yet. But this is what I want you to know. As the pastor of this church, I'm not going to allow a fear of anything to keep me from doing what God wants me to do. And that's the kind of church I want to have. I don't want to have a church that's afraid of everything. Listen, if that's the kind of church you're looking for, there's plenty of churches out there that are still not having services, and they're dying. Some of you might be afraid to witness. You're afraid of inviting somebody to church next Sunday. You know you are. You're afraid that you might say something that could upset them. Or you might really reveal that you are a Christian. It's like, I've never told them I'm a Christian. They don't even know I'm a Christian. I'll be embarrassed. I'm too afraid to say something. Listen to me. Don't be afraid. God says, stop standing where you are. Move on. Get going. Witness to that person. Tell them about Jesus Christ. Hand them an invitation. Let them know you'd like to see them come and be a part of our Easter service. Some of you, I know, you're afraid of tithing. You have this fear that if I start tithing, I won't be able to pay my bills. I won't be able to take care of myself. I'm just too afraid, Pastor. I can't do that. And what God is saying to you right now is stop being afraid and have faith in Him. Look up to Him in faith. Move out in faith that God is going to be there and help you each step along the way. See, until you stop tipping God and start tithing to God, you're not going to really experience God's blessings in your life. And I mean that in love. You're just not going to experience God's blessings. So the way to conquer fear is to move against it in faith. I believe in God. I trust in God. And I move against the very thing I'm afraid of, looking up to God and saying, I have faith in you, Lord, that you're going to take care of me. That's when your fear is going to vanish. That's when the waters are going to part in your life. And I want to illustrate that for you this morning. So I brought with me this vase, and you can see I've got on top of it this toilet paper, tissue. And I want you to think of the vase as God. This is God. Just make believe this is God. And the tissue on top that I've got wrapped around it with a rubber band, I want you to think of that as fear. This is God, this is fear. And I brought with me a couple of quarters. And I want you to think of this as us. This is us. We're not able to have fellowship with God. We're not able to have a relationship with God. We're not able to be in God because we've got fear in our life. It's preventing us from experiencing what God wants us to experience. Do you understand that? So I've got some water. And I want you to think of the water as faith. This is what I've been sharing with you. If you have fear, you need to look up to God in faith and believe that God is going to take care of your needs. And so it doesn't take a lot of faith. You know, you don't have to be a spiritual giant to see the waters part. Listen, Israel was a bunch of cowards, but they had faith, a little tiny bit of faith in God, and God honored that faith. And what happened? The waters parted. Just like that. It didn't take a whole lot of water. Doesn't take a whole lot of faith. But once you break through that fear, you're going to experience what God wants you to experience, His blessings in your life. Does that make sense? Exodus chapter 14, verse 21 through 22, it says this. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. That's power, folks. Right there, that's power. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. I want you to circle a phrase here. It's the phrase went through. The Israelites went through the sea. Look up here. If you're facing some fear right now, if you're dealing with some fear in your life right now, God is not going to have you go around it. God is going to have you go through it. Do you understand that? You're trying to figure out, how do I get around this situation? How do I avoid this situation? I don't want to go through this situation. God says, I don't have any other way for you. The only way you can go is through it. You've got to face it. You've got to deal with it. And while you're doing that, you've got to look up to God, and you've got to have faith that He's going to be there and help you each step along the way. And that's what happened with Israel. Israel, every step they took at that moment was a step of faith for them. The moment they lifted their foot, that was their step of faith. It wasn't when they put their foot down. It was as they lifted it up. God said, that's enough. Whew. They said, okay. Whew. And immediately it was dry. Immediately the water was gone. Immediately they were able to cross over. So if you want to conquer fear, you have to have faith.